So if you don't listen to Beyond Reason Radio, weeknights, here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA Live, or if you don't listen to the podcast, but especially live, we're on Facebook Live as well. You can like the Facebook page of Beyond Reason Radio. You're crazy, and this is why. It seems like every day now, right before I get on the air, an hour, half hour, whatever, there's some kind of breaking news that we have to talk about. So, and you should want to hear from me, the voice of reason, to hear all the breaking news. But, I mean, seriously, it's been like, ever since I got back from vacation last week, there has been some kind, every time I get on the air, there's some kind of breaking news that we have to talk about and discuss. And usually, 9 times out of 10, it has to do with the Trump administration and all the craziness that's going on there. So, Trump, I'm telling you, he makes sure to do this right before my show. I have to get Yaffee on the air. It's going to be big, beyond reason, huge. Huge. Got to watch it. Got to listen tonight. Beyond Reason Radio. He'll tell you the latest. He's a good friend of mine. Does a lot of good things. Yes. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason. In a world that is beyond reason, we are on till 10 p.m. tonight, 8 to 10 p.m. right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. But if you missed any of the live show, don't worry. You can check the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. So the big breaking news before this show is that they have the Deputy Attorney General, has appointed a special counsel. Not a special prosecutor, but a special counsel. They worded it differently, probably because they don't want to imply that there's a crime being prosecuted. So since it's just an investigation into a probe into the investigation over the general Russia stuff, they're going to say it's a special counsel. That's what I think is going to happen. And they have appointed Robert Mueller, who is the former FBI director. He was the FBI director from 2001 to 2013. And I have Trump's statement on that as well. I have Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General's statement on that as well. But let's get the latest, and I have a report here from Fox News that will tell us the latest on all this. Here it is.
Former FBI Director Robert Mueller has been named as special counsel to oversee the federal investigation of Russian interference in the U.S. election and possible links to the Trump campaign. The decision made by Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein was a surprise even to the White House, which wasn't informed until after the order had been signed, just about an hour before the public announcement. A lot of Democrats and even a few Republicans have called for someone outside the Justice Department to lead the investigation. Following reports, President Trump may have asked ousted FBI Director James Comey to end the investigation of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
All right, so here is the statement from Rosenstein. Is it Rosenstein or Rosenstein? He just said it, and I missed it.
I wasn't paying attention.
Oh, come on, Tom Benton. I look so out of touch.
What's the last three letters in his name?
E-I-N.
E-I-N. Stein.
Okay, that's what I thought. Rosenstein. I don't know why I've been mixing that up in my head. This is what he said, Rosenstein said. He said, in my capacity as acting attorney general, I determine that it is in the public interest for me to exercise my authority and appoint a special counsel to assume responsibility for this matter. My decision is not finding that crimes have been committed or that any prosecution is warranted. See, that's why they didn't do a special prosecutor. I'm telling you, I have made no such determination. What I have determined it is that based upon the unique circumstances, the public interest requires me to place this investigation under the authority of a person who exercises a degree of independence from the normal chain of command. So that's why Rosenstein did it. President Trump made a statement on this as well. He said this, as I've stated many times, a thorough investigation will confirm what we already know. There was no collusion between my campaign and any foreign entity. I look forward to this matter concluding quickly. In the meantime, I will never stop fighting for the people and the issues that matter most to the future of our country. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680 with your reaction. So,
that was a rather positive statement, really. You know, he wasn't taking any cheap shots at anybody. He was just reacted as a
Are you saying that possibly President Trump has learned his lesson?
No, I didn't say that.
Is that what you're implying there, Tom Menson?
Let's not get carried away
Can
here.
we have hope that maybe President Trump has learned his lesson on how to react to these things? Yeah, we'll see. But, you know, so, by the way, that is Tom Benson producing tonight as well. He'll be screening your calls as well. So I guess this means the Democrats will be happy, right? You think? Now it's settled. They appointed a special counsel, so no more talks of impeachment right now. They'll all be happy. Sunshine and lollipops. We'll get to the bottom of this, and everything will quiet down. You think
Mueller was FBI director for many years for both a Republican and Democratic president.
Do you really think the Democrats are going to shut up about all this anytime soon?
Well, I think a little wind will be taken out of their sails by this.
Maybe. We'll see. I mean, you're kind of right, because this is probably a good pick. It seems like Rosenstein knows what he's doing, at least, and this pick is not one that the Democrats can hate too much. I mean, they can try to find a way. They might be mad that this didn't go further. They're going to still push the narrative that this has to do with this is going to lead to impeachment, that there's collusion, that there was obstruction of justice. This won't go far enough in dealing with the obstruction of justice angle, and we're going to hear all of that. So
the timing is good, too, for this appointment, because he's giving a special briefing to members of the House on Friday morning.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly right. So despite all this, the Civil War, or as Tom Benson, you told me during the break, the social Civil War. I like that. I think that is exactly what we're in, because that's exactly what we're in. The social Civil War continues on. And that's what's really going on here. And as I talked about in yesterday's show, that's what has been frustrating me the most, because there is obviously political agendas on both sides trying to create different narratives. You have the left trying to say collusion, 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 obstruction of justice, obstruction of justice. That's hard to say 3 times fast. And then you have the right who says, who cares about all this? Leaks, leaks, leaks. Focus on the leaks, leaks, leaks. So there's obviously narratives going on both sides. And I am going to play some voices of reason in all this, since I'm the voice of reason. I need to start a new segment, the voice of reasons of the day. The voice of reason of the day. So we're going to get to that in a little bit as well. But I want to play some cuts, because there is no doubt that the narrative's already been started. This is the next Watergate. This is going to lead to impeachment. The reaction, overreaction is what we do now in today's world. There is no doubt about it. Overreaction is what we do in today's world. And the best example of this is there was a montage that some of you have probably seen out there of the left in the media talking about impeachment. Right off the gate, asking questions, people, Democrats agreeing, like Maxine Waters. And this goes on for 2 minutes, this montage. We're going to play all of it, because just imagine this is being pushed out constantly, constantly, constantly. And it just is playing into this social civil war that's going on. Here it is.
Welcome back. You're watching MSNBC. I'm Stephanie Rule. The calls are growing for the ouster of President Trump. Another member of Congress wants him impeached.
Is that potentially impeachable if it's an obstruction of justice?
I think we're going to have to look into it a little bit further.
You were saying that this could lead down the road to impeachment, but we weren't anywhere near that yet. Does this breaking news tonight change your view on that?
Are we getting closer and closer to the
this is still going on
of yet another impeachment process?
Reluctantly, Wolf, I have to say yes.
Is it an impeachable offense?
Oh, there's more. This hasn't stopped
justice?
yet.
So in terms of impeachment,
still going on.
Taking action, working with Republicans, or doing anything that would actually move that agenda forward?
Do you harbor any hopes that you will find a conservative legal mind to match your desire to proceed with impeachment?
Here we go, more impeachment.
I think he can be
Maxine Waters gets involved. Here we go, yes.
Obstruction of justice.
Of justice.
So you mean impeachment proceedings?
I beg your pardon?
You mean impeachment proceedings? Impeachment
She's
originates
been calling
in the House.
for it before,
House
way
leadership
before
and the
this.
Republican Party has shown no interest in that and seems like it's the furthest thing from their mind. You think that's going to change?
Are you suggesting that President Trump
Oh,
should face
Blitzer's
impeachment?
back. There we go.
No, I'm not suggesting that.
Congressman, what is your case for impeachment?
But now we're talking impeachment. Do you think this is a bridge too far?
Yeah, what do you think of this impeachment possibility? What's
Chris
more needed
Matthews,
to prove
he's salivating
obstruction
at
of
this.
justice
He
than
loves
the president fires the guy coming after him after asking him to drop the case? What more do you need?
Is that the impeachment is the remedy? I mean, the president can't. It's
the only remedy.
Impeachment's it's the only remedy.
Impeachment within your party. You have Congresswoman Maxine Waters. You have Congressman Al Green. Congresswoman.
This is still going on. I'm telling you, this is over 2 minutes long.
For this president.
You heard Jeffrey Toobin say it would be an obstruction of justice, and potentially, as you know, Senator, that could be impeachable. That could be an impeachable offense.
You know, the remarkable thing about that is all the leading questions that the so-called anchors were posing. I mean, they're searching for somebody to agree with them.
Of course they are. It's creating the narrative that this is leading to impeachment so that everyone watching has in their minds now, is this impeachment? This is leading to impeachment. This is the next Watergate. We have no idea if it's the next Watergate now. Now, of course, because this is a social civil war, President Trump is going to fight back. And he spoke at a commencement speech today, and this is what he said in response to all of this.
Look at the way I've been treated lately, especially by the media. No politician in history, and I say this with great surety, has been treated worse or more unfairly. You can't let them get you down. You can't let the critics and the naysayers get in the way of your dreams. I didn't get elected to serve the Washington media or special interests. I got elected to serve the forgotten men and women of our country, and that's what I'm doing. I will never stop fighting for you, and I will never stop fighting for the American people. I am heading on a very crucial journey as well. In a few days, I will make my first trip abroad as president, with the safety, security, and interests of the American people as my priority. I will strengthen old friendships and will seek new partners, but partners who also help us, not partners who take and take and take. Partners who help, and partners who help pay for whatever we are doing and all of the good we're doing for them, which is something that a lot of people have not gotten used to, and they just can't get used to it. I say, get used to it, folks.
So Trump, of course, is fighting back. Now he's kind of playing the victim here, saying, he's a victim of what's going on. He's a victim of the media. So, I mean, that's one thing. But I think one thing he is doing is pretty smart here. What he is doing is he's saying, I'm going to continue working for the American people. This is an attack on me because I'm actually doing the work of the people, and these people are against that. I've heard this a lot, actually, lately, that the defense is he's actually draining the swamp, and that the swamp is fighting back, so to speak. There might be a little bit of truth to that. I don't know. I think it gives you a little too much credit. But politically speaking, and in terms of putting a message through, I think it's actually a pretty smart response to that. So we'll see what happens. If Trump, and today is a good example, the Deputy Attorney General is appointing the Special Counsel. They had a written statement. Trump had a written statement. This was put into place much more organized. And then Trump having and honing in his message of what he is about and what he's actually doing for the American people. If they can craft this and organize this better, Trump can fight back. I've been saying from the beginning, don't always underestimate Trump, because he did win despite all the backlash against him in the campaign and in the election. So don't underestimate him. He can come back and turn all this around. That being said, he has also created a lot of these problems as well. What is your reaction to all of this? 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We're going to have our Voices of Reason of the day on this coming up next. And we have a lot more to get to, including the things that could bring about economic apocalypse. That'll be a fun segment. We'll go through that list. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
All right, so let me read Trump's statement again in terms of the Deputy Attorney General has appointed former FBI Director Robert Mueller on the Russia probe, basically the investigation into the Russia probe, and see what's going on with that. This is what Trump said, released a statement today in response to this. He says, as I've stated many times, a thorough investigation will confirm what we already know. There was no collusion between my campaign and any foreign entity. I look forward to this matter concluding quickly. In the meantime, I will never stop fighting for the people and the issues that matter most to the future of our country. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We have Tom Benson producing, and we want your reaction as well. Like I said before the show, it seems like there's breaking news before every one of my shows now. So if you don't listen to me in the evening, you're just misinformed. You're just missing out. You're gonna be missing out of all of it. Just saying. Okay, let's go to John in Lake Mary. John, what's your take on this?
Hi. Last time I called in, you were talking about how civility has diminished.
Right.
And I happened to call in on that.
I remember.
Media and stuff. Okay, well, then it just coincidentally, I turned on Netflix and saw the new documentary. I just watched it late at night to go to sleep and watched Get Me Roger Stone, which I would encourage everybody to watch. It's an uber liberal production. However, the facts in it are facts. And Roger Stone is probably one of the most despicable, underhanded political, hacks out there, who has started with Nixon and then has worked for Trump and has worked for many Republicans. And
John, I don't mean to cut you off,
right.
But what is your point on what you're saying?
Well, my point is that part of Stone's strategy is misinformation and using underhanded tactics and just repeating a lie until it sticks. To me, the point is that I think Trump incorporates, and Trump talks proudly about him, is that I think that Trump is doing some of the same things. To me, it's an absurdity that you would, as President of the United States, let's just take it, if Flynn was being charged or was possibly under investigation for child abuse, whatever, any crime other than what it was. And the president came up to the person in charge of it, and Flynn, who was a friend of Trump's and was on the campaign, went up to him and said, hey, or it was a mayor of Orlando, went up to the city official and said, hey, I sure hope you lay off him. And it's a matter of semantics. Trump knew exactly what his words meant. It's a semantic thing.
What did they mean?
Well, you say
it could just mean what he said.
It could mean, and the fact that he has, it would be okay in a position if he didn't hold the man's job over. He is the employer.
So you think it's intimidation, basically?
Oh, well, it had taken any other way, and he got fired. Now, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it was quid pro quo. It was exactly what caused it. However, appearances are, it looks very bizarre in what happened.
But the only problem with that is firing him doesn't change the investigation.
Right. It doesn't change the investigation. However, it gets him out of the mix. And Comey obviously didn't fall prey to it. Now, do I think Comey is above? I don't. But my whole point is there's so much misinformation, and that's
well, there's misinformation everywhere on both sides, really.
But true. But I'm just saying, if the other side does wrong, it doesn't make what you're doing right. And so my point is, it's Roger Stone. Regardless, if the Democrats are scum, I still would never, ever in a million years vote for Hillary, nor pretty much any Democrat because I don't believe in the agenda that they push. But with that being said, I don't believe that because they do it, it's okay for us. And this Roger Stone and Monfort they represented these tyrants throughout the third world countries to the United States.
Okay, John, you're getting a little off topic there, but I appreciate your take. So basically what he's saying is he believes because of Roger Stone influences and Trump's background, which is, it's a valid criticism. I criticized Trump for a lot of that stuff in the campaign, that what Trump did to Comey was intimidation and eventually led to Comey's firing. That's basically what the Democrats are saying. And that's saying, I hope you'll let this go, is to him intimidation. I think that's a little bit of a stretch, in my opinion. A lot of people agree with you, John, but I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that disagree with you. So I want those who disagree with John. There's got to be people out there listening that completely disagree with what he just said. So you can call 407-916-5400 or you can text to 23680. I will say this. John was talking about, two wrongs don't make a right. Just because the left does something wrong doesn't mean we should do something wrong. I'm going to talk about that in detail in the next hour. I have some cuts from Jonah Goldberg. He was on Glenn Beck's show this morning. Glenn Beck plays on this station from 9 to noon. I'm going to talk because he addresses that and makes some good points. And he also addresses the Comey thing and says basically what I've been saying, that Trump always makes flippant comments that he could really believe because he doesn't know what he's doing in terms of the presidency, that it's okay to casually say, I hope you let this go. And I think that's incredibly possible with the way Trump is. He's always been like that. He's never been one to really parse words or really think things through before he speaks. So we go into this route of, is Trump, then that goes back to the whole point, is Trump merely incompetent? Or is Trump absolutely intimidating and corrupt? In this situation, it's very hard to tell. Basically, we need more evidence, and that'll bring me back to what I'm going to get to in the next segment as well when I play my Voices of Reason, all this, because I have some cuts on this that really are talking about it's hard to speculate on some of this because there's so much political agenda involved in all this that to speculate on it, both sides are just merely pushing an agenda rather than actually wanting to get to the truth. These Democrats that talk about impeachment, they don't always want to get to the truth. Let's take another call here before we go to break. Let's talk to Becky in Orlando. Becky, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. What's up?
I was just agreeing with your comments about, him always playing the victim card. That is so Trump. He's constantly playing the victim when he, imposes it on himself. He's the one who talked to Comey about Flynn, which is a completely inappropriate conversation to have. He's the president of the United States.
I will say this. If it's not obstruction of justice, there's no doubt that it's inappropriate. I completely agree with that.
Absolutely. And I'm just so sick and tired. Everyone, I was a never Trumper, as they say. And now all of my friends who voted for Trump, interestingly enough, are like, oh, I'm jumping off the Trump bandwagon. And I'm like, why were you on it in the first place?
So you've actually that's very interesting. You've actually had some friends jumping off the Trump bandwagon now?
Absolutely.
Wow.
I have had several on Facebook. We have these dialogues about Trump. And I've had two friends particularly message me and say, hey, guess you were right.
Who was your candidate?
It was Cruz.
Ted Cruz? Okay.
Ted Cruz, absolutely, yeah. I was a Cruz girl all the way. And then I didn't even vote for Trump, to be honest, in the primary. Everyone's like, you're throwing away your vote, but I couldn't in good conscience vote for someone.
You mean in the election or the primary?
Like I'm sorry, in the general election. I didn't even vote for him.
Interesting. Okay, so yeah, like you said, you were a never Trumper. Are they falling off? Are they falling off the Trump bandwagon? Are they falling off the Trump bandwagon because of the Russia stuff?
Yeah, it has a lot to do with that. I guess between that and just in general, him using the excuse that he's draining the swamp and that's why everyone's turning on him, that was really specific. They were upset that he fired Comey. They were upset that he talked about Flynn. And mostly just in general, he's pretending that he's making this big difference of draining the swamp when in reality, nothing's really changing.
Well, that's true. He hasn't appointed a lot of people. I appreciate your call, Becky. You actually make some good points. There's a lot of people that he still hasn't appointed, so there's Obama holdovers in there and a lot of these in office positions. And he hasn't built the wall. We talked about that yesterday. Ann Coulter's really upset that he kind of caved on the wall. Healthcare has a long way from getting done. He hasn't really shown any real leadership on that. He has shown a little bit of leadership on tax reform, which is good. He has cut a lot of regulations through executive orders, which is good. They are starting to be really tough on crime, which is good. So to me, Trump is still a mixed bag. But there are some things, and we'll have to get to this later in this hour as well, there are some things that Trump is actually doing policy-wise that we should be really concerned about. And those are the things we should be talking about that maybe people should be jumping off the Trump bandwagon, because that's why Ann Coulter kind of is getting a little wishy-washy on Trump, because he's not accomplishing what conservatives wanted him to accomplish. And that really should be the issue. So we're going to play some voice of reasons in all of this. We're going to talk about some things that Trump is doing that is a little bit concerning and much more. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. You can call the show at 407-916-5400, or you can text to 23680. We've been talking about the fact that the Deputy Attorney General has appointed a special counsel to look into the Russia investigation, to be independent on all of this. We have been talking about Trump's statement, his response. We have been talking about the media hysteria over this, the social civil war as that has been going on. It's going on both sides. The Democrats have already jumped the gun and say this is impeachment, impeachment, impeachment. The Republicans are saying nothing to see here. Conservative media saying nothing to see here. Let's talk leaks. When really both are legitimate concerns. The leaks are definitely a legitimate concern. There's no doubt that Trump. If it was the opposite, okay, and all these leaks were happening in the Obama administration, there's no doubt that all these people in the media that were talking impeachment, their focus today would be on the leaks. But then you know that the right-wing media, their focus today would be on all the corruption part and saying Obama obstructed justice. So that's just where we are in today's world in the social civil war. But I wanted to play some cuts here. My goal has been lately to really be a voice of reason, because I say that's what the show is, but I really want to do that because I feel like no one is really searching for the truth. Everyone has an agenda, and I just don't have an agenda. Let's go, and I want to play the voice of reason first here. Let's go to Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan was talking today, and poor Paul Ryan, he wants so badly to move on to health care reform and tax reform and to get stuff done in Congress, and he knows that all this stuff going on with the Trump administration is a giant distraction from all of that. But he makes a good point that we have to wait until the facts are in, because there's a lot of agenda and politics going on. This is what he said.
Look, there's been a lot of reporting lately. I think that requires close examination. Let me tell you what I told our members just this morning. We need the facts. It is obvious there are some people out there who want to harm the president, but we have an obligation to carry out our oversight regardless of which party is in the White House. And that means before rushing to judgment, we get all the pertinent information. The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee has appropriately requested this memo, and I'm sure we're going to want to hear from Mr. Comey about why, if this happens as he allegedly describes, why didn't take action at the time. So there are a lot of unanswered questions. What I told our members is, now is the time to gather all the pertinent information. Our job is to be responsible, sober, and focus only on gathering the facts. That is what Congress does in conducting oversight of the executive branch.
So do you want to see Comey testify in an open hearing?
I will leave it to the committees that are doing these investigations. Just remember, there's an investigation occurring at the FBI. There's an investigation in the House, and there's an investigation in the Senate. So we've got 3 investigations going on. I'm not going to micromanage or armchair quarterback investigations. But the point is this. We can't deal with speculation and innuendo. And there's clearly a lot of politics being played. Our job is to get the facts and to be sober about doing that.
So Paul Ryan, I mean, for one, he said we need to have sober judgment and get all the facts. Man, is he living in the wrong time? I mean, go get all the facts and actually look at things and be sober and have judgment about it. Come on, Paul Ryan. It is the age of jumping to conclusions. That's what we're supposed to do. But he said it's clearly a lot of politics going on, and there's clearly people after Trump. And I think there's no doubt about that. So understanding that, that is why we have to wait for all the facts to get in. Because there is clearly politics going on. I played for you the cut earlier of all the talk about impeachment, all the Democrats talking about impeachment. That's all based on political agenda. And speaking of that, I meant to get to this earlier, but speaking of that, the Democrats are already using this for purely political purposes to win elections in 2018. In fact, the DNC, they are planning the resistance summer. The resistance summer. The idea of resistance is just silly. I hate that. It's like we're being run by a dictator. Stop it. Trump is not a dictator.
We've come a long way from the 60s, which were, upheaval of cultures going on all the time. But the summer of 67 was the summer of love.
Nope, it's resistance summer today. Yep, and they're hoping of harnessing Trump opposition. They're planning to pump $1 million into everything from rallies, town halls, and neighborhood meetings in hopes of growing voter opposition into President Trump, and they're calling it the resistance summer. It's a 50-state strategy, so we'll see how that works. It really depends if Trump actually accomplishes any real legislation, whether that will work or not. But another voice of reason I heard on this, similar to what Paul Ryan said, was Marco Rubio. He was on Fox and Friends this morning, and this is what he said.
Look, that's a serious matter. Again, we need to know the facts. And so I'm not telling you that the news articles are wrong. I'm telling you that if you're going to deal with something of this magnitude, shouldn't we at least have facts before us before we establish firm positions about what we're going to do next? Look, it's inevitable now and inescapable. I thought he was going to have to do this anyway, but given what we read yesterday in the newspaper, Director Comey or former Director Comey will have to testify before Congress. I imagine it will be before the Judiciary Committee. And he's going to have to turn over these notes and anything else that he kept, and we'll go from there. But I don't know, unless you were there, no one knows entirely what happened. Yeah. So we need to establish facts before we jump to conclusions. And whatever the facts are, I'm going to always do what's right for the United States of America first and foremost. But we need facts. We're not just going to make our opinion based on news reports, because even the news reports written by reporters are not first-hand accounts. They are the details given to them by sources. And sources come in all shapes and sizes on both sides of the debate. And sources try to spin reporters. And I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I'm just saying you cannot base it simply on that. Again, I am not denigrating the free media. I think the free media is important. They do a great service for our country when they report things. But our job is to arrive at the facts before we can reach conclusions, not to mention advocate for action.
Man, he's living in the wrong time too, man. Talking about getting the facts before we can reach conclusions that we don't really know what happened unless we were there, and that's why we need more facts. Come on, you're supposed to jump to conclusions, Marco Rubio. Come on now, that's what we do now in today's world. Oh, man, but it is, like I said, another voice of reason. Now, believe it or not, there was a Democrat voice of reason, and I'm a little sick to my stomach saying this right now, because I don't want to admit this, but like I said, the truth is my agenda here. Bernie Sanders, of all people, was on CNN. And he's not a voice of reason in a lot of things because he's a socialist, okay? I mean, enough said there. But in terms of this Trump hoopla, in terms of this talk of impeachment, in terms of this craziness that he obstructed justice and all this stuff, and that he's in bed with Russia. Believe it or not, yesterday on CNN, when he did a town hall, he was actually a voice of reason on the Democrat side for this. So I have to give him credit where credit's due. This is what he said.
And where we are right now is trying to determine, was there collusion between the Trump campaign, and Trump's people have a number of contacts in Russia. But John is right. I don't think you want to make that leap to impeachment until you follow a path which leads us there. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I'm not there at this point.
The beauty. So I just played all those cuts of all these Democrats wanting impeachment, and I talked about it yesterday, tweets going out of people calling for impeachment. And Bernie Sanders, of all people, the leftist of leftists, comes out and say, no, we cannot jump the gun and call for impeachment. We have to go where the facts lead us. There are some concerns that we have, but that does not mean there has to be impeachment. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but I had to give him credit because I think he's exactly right. If the Democrats were smart, they would follow that model. They would let Trump destroy himself in a lot of this stuff, but their hysteria before he got elected, this all started even before he got elected, over everything he does ruins any credibility they have when Trump actually does something bad, because like Paul Ryan said and like Rubio said, it's all about politics. So I'm going to get into a couple of things, though, that Trump is doing that I'm very concerned about that have nothing to do with all of this. We'll get to that, and we'll take your calls as well. You can call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you heart Beyond Reason Radio, listen to the Beyond Reason Radio podcast on iHeartRadio. Just download the iHeartRadio app and search Beyond Reason Radio. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
So a U.S. official clarified to theconservativereview.com that the official Trump administration position on Jerusalem is the same as the Obama administration's Israel's claim over Jerusalem are not recognized and should be solved through negotiations with the Palestinians, the official explained. Earlier this week, they tried to get Sean Spicer to say whether the Western Wall was a part of Israel, and he could not, he would not confirm and would not talk about it. It seems like even though the Trump administration initially said that they wanted to move the embassy to Jerusalem, that they want to believe Jerusalem is Israel's rightful capital, that they are starting to cave on that. And then, of course, Trump met with the Palestinian leader not too long ago. I'm telling you this because this is an actual foreign policy decision by the Trump administration that really is concerning to me. Because this is another one of those things where it seems like Trump is breaking his promises and doing the usual politician thing. So while everyone's focusing on all this other stuff, all this craziness, this social civil war, we have an actual problem here where the Trump administration seems to be caving, like most administrations have done, to the Palestinians again. Now, Trump has always called for, quote unquote, a deal between the Palestinians and Israel. He wants to broker the ultimate deal, is what he has said. I think that's naive, because the Palestinians want nothing more than the destruction of Israel. How do you negotiate with people like that?
I can't see Trump undoing 2,000 years plus of hate.
Yeah, exactly right. This has been going on for a long time. We've been hearing this talks of this so-called deal since it's my whole life, my entire life. And to think that Trump's going to come in and do some kind of deal. No, let Israel say Jerusalem's the capital. Let's just side with Israel. They're what's better for the region. Anyway, 407-916-5400. Let's take a call here. Let's go to John in Titusville. John, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Pretty good. What's your take on everything we've been talking about?
I just wanted to comment on the last two callers. I hate to be the person who's going to defend Trump, but if nobody's going to, I will. He was saying that I guess Trump's people, if they repeat the same thing over and over again, the big lie, then it's going to stick. Well, guess what? The Democrats have been doing that forever. Hitler did it to the best, and the Democrats are just like him. Now, he's falling for exactly what he's talking about. We're talking about stuff we don't even know about. Just because the New York Times said something happened, then we're already judging him and throwing him out the door.
You're talking about the last caller was falling for it.
No, I'm talking about John was saying. I think his name
Right.
was John. Or
one of the
saying
that caller. Yes.
Correct. He was saying that
It's obvious he was trying to intimidate Comey, is what he was saying.
Correct, and we absolutely don't know what happened there. It's ridiculous that the president can't call the FBI chief in and say, look, and Flynn fought hard for him during the campaign. Obviously, they're good friends, and he could say, hey, look, this is a good guy. He's just saying whatever. Not don't do it. But I could easily see him say, this is a good guy. He's given his life to this country, and maybe you should think twice about it. But if he's not allowed to say something like that, then I guess we should believe that all that is ever talked to between officials is grandkids in golf, just like Clinton and Lynch.
You can make a good... Well, but see, here's the thing, though. In terms of the Lynch thing, the right jumped on that and say that's obviously some kind of intimidation or corruption or collusion going on there. So, it shows a lot of the hypocrisy there, because if the right... And I'm saying it happens on both sides, I guess is my point, because if this was on the right and it was the Obama saying this to Comey, a lot of us would be screaming, oh my gosh, this is intimidation.
I agree, but let's find out. There's supposedly a memo or whatever. Let's find out the facts first before we decide. Let's all take a breath. Now, I'd like to say something.
I agree with you. I think that's a good take. That's being a voice of reason, which we're trying to be on this show. But go ahead, John. You're making
Correct.
good points.
Becky is a never Trumper, and like Becky, I am just like Becky. I love Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I like him too, but Ted Cruz.
I love Ted Cruz. I'm a big Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz the whole way. But unlike Becky, I put my thoughts second and the United States first, and I voted for Trump because every morning you should get up and say, who is president? And when the answer is not Hillary Clinton, we should thank God, and everything else is gravy. If he does nothing more than put Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, everything else is gravy. Now, vote him out of office in 4 years.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that was a big reason why I voted for Trump. I didn't support him in the primary either. I had a lot of problems with him. But in terms of the general election, he was the best option at the time, and that's why I voted for him. And I think you make a good point.
Right. That's my only point. She is not president. Our country would. Can you imagine what the last 4 months would be? And everybody's saying Trump hasn't done this, hasn't done this. He's been president for 4 months. Give him a break. He's done a lot in 4 months. And
that's true. Although I can't cut him complete slack because he did kind of cave on the whole wall thing and the latest budget thing when he really could have stood up for that.
I agree, but don't trash the guy. Come on, let's all. If we supported our Republicans like the Democrats support their Democrats, this country would be a wonderful place. But we don't. We stab our own guys in the back. Come on, let's give them a break. It's 4 months. That's all. That's all I had to say.
John, you make some excellent, good call. Thank you so much for calling. I really appreciate it. Here's my take in terms of what are you saying. Let's support him. This is my philosophy, and you'd think it would be kind of a common sense philosophy, but who knows? How about we support him when he does stuff good and criticize him when he does stuff bad? And how about we do that for everybody? When he does something we agree with, we support him. When he does something that deserves criticism, we criticize him. That's kind of my philosophy for anybody, in really any situation. That doesn't mean we won't vote for him. That doesn't mean we won't support him over the other candidate, but we still have to hold his feet to the fire. And I think that's a lot of what Ann Coulter's doing. All right, we have much more to get to on this subject. I want to talk more about the political divide we're in, the social civil war, and how we should approach that. And actually, that call kind of relates to that, so we're going to get into that. I heard some great comments from Jonah Goldberg from the National Review. He was on Glenn Beck's show earlier. We're going to play the audio of that and much more in the latest breaking news, of course. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. 1 more hour to go. We will be right back. Statement from President Trump. Statement from President Trump, as I have stated many times, a thorough investigation will confirm what we already know. There was no collusion between my campaign and any foreign entity. I look forward to this matter concluding quickly. In the meantime, I will never stop fighting for the people and the issues that matter most to the future of this country. Statement by Rosenstein, who just appointed Mueller, former FBI Director Mueller, to be a special counsel in looking into the Russia investigation. He says this. He says, and I just lost it.
Well, one good thing about Mueller is he was head of the FBI for so many years under two different presidents. I'm sure this guy knows where the bones are scattered in that department, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, this is what Rosenstein said. He says, in my capacity as acting attorney general, I determine that it is in the public interest for me to exercise my authority and appoint a special counsel to assume responsibility for this matter. My decision is not a finding that crimes have been committed or that any prosecution is warranted. I have made no such determination. What I have determined is that based upon the unique circumstances that public interest requires me to place this investigation under the authority of a person who exercises a degree of independence from the normal chain of command. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We have been on for an hour. We were on at 8 p.m. If you missed any of the first hour, I will post the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. You can check out the Facebook Live video from that hour. Just go to, just like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page, or you can send me a friend request. Just search Michael Yaffee. I will accept it. And you can follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. And I have Tom Benson producing. How are you, Tom, tonight?
We are doing fine. Thank you very much. And like I said yesterday, if you don't like the news that's happening, and just wait 24, 36 hours. Something else will come along.
Something else will come along. And that's why I say Trump always has some kind of breaking news right before I go on the air. So if you're missing this show, you're missing out on the breaking news. I mean, that's just that Trump always waits until right before my show to get it. I mean, it's just the truth of the matter now. So we talked a lot about that. The special counsel, obviously the Democrats are not going to just shut up now. They're not going to. It does kind of take a little bit of the wind out of their sails, I think, because the guy who's being appointed is, worked under Obama. It's hard to complain about that, but they're going to find a way to complain about it.
Well, it's like a 3-ring circus, and this one ring has now been shut down, but they have 2 other rings to work on,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is exactly right. They're still going to call for impeachment. They're still going to say obstruction of justice, and they're already using this for a fundraising effort over the summer, which they are calling Resistance Summer, which, as Tom Benson, you pointed out, is a long way from the summer of love in the 60s.
Yeah, back in 1967, which, it's kind of interesting. It's 50 years. 50 years later, we haven't proceeded, haven't progressed much at all.
Exactly right. So I wanted to get into a really important topic in all this, and that is what I'm stealing this from you, Tom Benson, the producer, but I really like it. What I'm going to call the social civil war in this country. This divide that we've talked a lot on this show, and how we should react, and how I try to react as a voice of reason. At the end of the last hour, we had a caller who was talking about we should support the president. Over the Democrats, of course, I'm going to support Trump over the Democrats, and I'm going to try to believe in what he's doing. But my philosophy has always been, you support when he does something good and something that's worth the support, and you criticize when he deserves the criticism. We should have this approach anywhere in life. You should have that approach with your own family. You overall support your own family. But if your family does something that's worth criticism, you're not doing them a favor by ignoring that. You want to openly tell them and be honest with them about the criticism to hold their feet to the fire. It should be that same way with the politicians, I think.
Well, it's the old Christian saying, love the sinner and hate the sin.
Well, yeah, there you go. Does that mean I have to love Democrats? I have to love the left?
You have.
I do. As a Christian, you're right. I do. But so the question I have is, how should we react to voices of reason? Because this is what's happening now with Trump. Okay? Trump is one of the most divisive figures in American history, but really Trump's just a reflection of our country. It's not all Trump's fault. Our country is just really divided, and Trump is just a reflection of that division, I think.
Getting back to loving the Democrats, let me quote or paraphrase what a Democrat said during the campaign. Something about when they take the low road, we take the high road, huh? Didn't Hillary
you just
say
quote
that?
Hillary Clinton on this show?
I think I did.
I don't want to. Now I can't do it because of Hillary Clinton. Of course, she said it like this. When they take the low road, we take the high road. so then maybe I just didn't hear it because my ears were bleeding. I happened to hear an interview with Jonah Goldberg, who writes for the National Review, and he's not someone who minces words against political correctness. He did a whole book called Liberal Fascism. He wants to get to the truth on this. But he had some really good comments about what's going on, because the left right now, they're talking impeach, 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 obstruction, obstruction, obstruction. You know, they're going as far as treason, treason, treason. And then you have the right now who says Trump's awesome. He's draining the swamp. He's great. He's great. He's great. He's making America great again. We have to focus on the leaks. This is all just an attack that's unwarranted. He has not done anything wrong. And that's where we are. And I feel like because we have political agendas, because we have a political narrative, we don't want to get to the truth. And that's my agenda. I mean, I don't know Trump personally, so I have no bones to pick. If he gets impeached, that's Mike Pence. I love Mike Pence. So Mike Pence becomes president, and it's not the end of the world to me. But, I don't know these politicians personally. All I care about is what's right. And I think that's what we should all care about. I'm just a young guy behind a microphone who I think I have pretty good intuition about this kind of stuff, but who wants to get and search for the truth. That's obviously my main goal. So Jonah Goldberg talked about this, and I really liked his comments on this, and we're going to go through it. He talked about it on Glenn Beck's show this morning. That show plays on this station 9 to noon. I know we have a lot of Glenn Beck haters out there right now because he wasn't supportive of Trump. But I still listen to his show. I listen to all kinds of different voices out there. But I wanted to play this and get your reaction. And you can react if you want and disagree. We've had people disagree in the first hour. So what you have to do is call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680. Let's hear some of what Jonah Goldberg said this morning.
If hypocrisy were helium, we'd all have funny voices, and some people would just float away.
Okay, stop right there. I just have to agree with that. It's a perfect. If hypocrisy were helium, we would all have funny voices, and some people would just float away. I think that is exactly true. That is exactly where politics is, and it's been like that for a long time. It's not necessarily new, but it seems to have gotten to the extreme. And the reason why there's such a social civil war is it's bleeding over to other parts of our life. It's not just in the political sphere. Now we have late night hosts talking about it, and we see it all day on social media, and we have the 24-hour news cycle, and you can't even talk to your friends at work who might disagree with you on
I've heard there's been divorces over this.
Yeah, there's lost friendship. But then I bet you it's the other way as well, where there's marriages over your mutual hatred for Trump. So there's divorces over it and probably marriages over it. It's just crazy town. But Jonah, so I think he's right on that. Jonah Goldberg continues on here.
And it is as I keep saying to some of my friends on the right who are absolutely right in their criticisms of the double standards of the mainstream media and how the mainstream media is freaking out about stuff that it yawned about under Barack Obama. That's all a perfectly good point to make, and it's a good argument to make. But it's a necessary argument, but not a sufficient argument, in the sense that if the things that Obama did, and when Obama did X and the mainstream media didn't freak out, and you criticize the mainstream media for not freaking out, and then when Trump does X and you criticize the mainstream media for freaking out, well, you should be freaking out too, since if you believe in the rule of law and you think Obama violated the rule of law and you stomped your spoon on your high chair for 8 years about, what Obama was doing to violate the rule of law, and then Trump violates the rule of law, and all you have to say is look how hypocritical the New York Times is, well, then you're being a hypocrite too. You have a double standard too.
Okay, stop right there. I completely agree with that. If we reverse roles in this situation, we can't, complain when Obama does stuff wrong or when the mainstream media doesn't criticize, Obama for doing stuff wrong. And then they criticize Trump for doing stuff that's wrong. And then we say, oh, well, they shouldn't criticize Trump for doing something wrong. That's totally being hypocritical. Like he said, everyone's a hypocrite now. That being said, I understand why a lot on the right are so defensive. And they are because of the double standard. They are because they know the Washington Post and the New York Times will not go after Obama like they are Trump. And that's what Paul Ryan said. I played that cut earlier in the last hour. Paul Ryan came out and he said, there's obviously a lot of politics going on here. There's obviously people after Trump here. So you have to know all the facts before you start making too many conclusions. That being said, we can't be a people that are not willing to criticize our guy when he does something wrong. We have to be willing to do that. We all should be willing to do that in our lives. He continues on here.
Call out a Republican president for doing stuff that you condemned a Democratic president for. Fine, call the New York Times a bunch of hypocrites, but you're being hypocritical too. And this is a huge problem on the right with a lot of people sort of trying to find this safe harbor of anti-Trumpism. They don't, and they're absolutely right that much of the left-wing freak out, this resistance nonsense and all of that is absurd. I mean, so much of it has been, Donald Trump put salt on his French fries. Hitler put salt on his French fries.
Okay, stop right there. That is true. And I've talked about that on this show for a long time, that even before Trump got inaugurated, there was talk about his impeachment. There was talk of comparing him to Hitler. His inauguration speech was compared to Hitler just because he said American first. There were protests at his first executive order. There was protests at his inauguration. There was all this stuff. And Trump's a very divisive figure. But I kept telling them at the time is you keep doing this overuse outrage. You keep getting outrage every time he believes. You're overplaying your hand. And because of that, now you have everyone's going to be ultra defensive. They're not going to believe you, even if you have a legitimate criticism of him. So maybe we should have sober judgment in what we're doing and know all the facts. I think he's exactly right there. He continues on.
That kind of nonsense. And I'm all in favor of calling it out. But if that's all you're doing a disservice, because some of the things that Donald Trump has done are legitimately worth criticizing.
So yeah, he and I agree with him. There are some things that Trump has done, and I talked about that in the last hour, that are worth legitimate criticism. And we have to be willing to do that with our politicians. But nobody on either side is really willing to do that. We just want to win. We just want to be on the right side. And I think he makes a valid point. Now, the second cut here from Jonah Goldberg, he said later, I think he makes an excellent point as well on the real issue that I think is in the Trump administration. They keep saying, I've been saying for a long time, the Democrats need to decide, the left needs to decide whether Trump is an evil, maniacal genius in bed with Russia or he's just incompetent and doesn't know what he's doing. Okay, and I think I tend to lead more that he doesn't know what he's doing. He's inexperienced. He's flippant. He shoots from the hip. And that's what really creates a lot of these problems. It's created a lot of problems in his campaign. It's created a lot of problems in his whole career. That's who Trump is. What did you expect electing Donald Trump as president of the United States? But Jonah Goldberg puts it well here, and this is what he said.
Donald Trump has contempt for all of the traditional rules, all the traditional procedures, and he wants to go off the cuff. And so when he does stuff like ask the FBI director, as we learned yesterday, to go easy on an investigation into Mike Flynn, the former national security advisor, it seems utterly plausible that, he can just be like, oh, was I not supposed to do that? Because he doesn't know, he doesn't know what he doesn't know.
I completely agree with him. He doesn't know what he doesn't know. I think that is completely possible. That's why when I actually read Trump's comments, the actual quoting from the comments, not the headlines, but what he actually said, and when he said, I hope you can let this go. I think Michael Flynn is a good guy. I can completely see Donald Trump just thinking that was appropriate and just trying to have a casual conversation and giving his opinion that he thinks, I wish this would just I wish you would just let this go. I hope you can. Is a good guy. And not thinking that's really intimidation. And not really thinking that's any obstruction of justice. Now, an experienced politician who's been around a long time would know, who doesn't shoot from the hip, would know you don't do that because it looks bad. Even if it isn't what your intention is, you don't even want the appearance of something bad like that. But Trump isn't like that. And it's the same thing with how he fired Comey. He just sends off a letter. Comey hears about it from cable news. It's the same things with some of his executive orders. He didn't really think it through in every aspect of it. He just gets it done. There's a whole bunch of chaos and how to implement it. And then there's other stuff where he doesn't talk with his staff. His staff's not sure why Trump says something on Twitter. He just randomly says something on Twitter, shoots from the hip, saw a brief news report and overreacts to it. And then so his staff they say, go to his staff, what does he mean by this? The staff has no idea. And that's because it's Donald Trump. And so the Democrats, if they were actually really smart, they would focus on that. They would focus on the incompetence. They would focus on the inexperience. They would focus, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and that might be more plausible. But instead, what they're actually doing is they're going through this whole Russia collusion, practically saying Trump's a Russian spy. And I feel like you're going to get, the right's going to be defensive anyways, but they're going to be extra defensive and you've lost your credibility. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. You can react to what Jonah Goldberg said. You can react to what I said. I'm going to get into something that Trump is doing policy-wise, foreign policy again, that maybe we should be a little concerned about as well. And it's kind of going against what he said in the campaign. We'll see how it fleshes out, and I'll give you the latest on that next. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. I'll be right back.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. The place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
So I got a text coming in. A guy's been texting a lot. He is basically saying this. He says Trump knows exactly what he is doing. He's ratting out anarchists. He is right. He did nothing wrong. And we need to put this issue to bed. So let's see if anyone agrees or disagrees with that. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. Your opinion is welcome. I'm getting lots of texts and calls tonight. I love this. I hope you guys keep listening to the show. By the way, I know the show usually, sometimes we're on 7 to 9, sometimes we're on 8 to 10, but you can always catch the podcast of the show. Just download the Beyond Reason Radio app. You can also get it on the iHeartRadio app and just search Beyond Reason Radio. Or you can go to beyondreasonradio.com. You can always catch it. We are going to be on tomorrow night as well from 7 to 9 p.m. So you'll want to join me then. I'm sure something will break during the day that we'll have to talk about, but right before the show. So here we go. Let's take a call here from Mike in Ocoee. Mike, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. How's it going? What's your comment?
Great. Well, I just I heard your comments about how hypocritical it is to look at something like this in the view of a conservative. And that, when Trump told Comey, hey, you may want to, I hope you can get over this, if that was the expression, first off, there's really no proof he said it as of now, right? But secondly, even if he did say it, is that a criminal act or even an act that the president is inappropriate for? Actually, the president and the legislative branch control the Justice Department as well as the FBI, so I don't see that so inappropriate as well. And then lastly, the part that's really frustrating is when Hillary Clinton did all this stuff with her server and Comey on national news, got out there and said, hey, her intent wasn't so bad, so we really don't need to prosecute her. Well, where's the pass for Trump then? His intent maybe wasn't to intimidate Comey. In fact, what he did was probably not even illegal. But with Hillary Clinton, we know she did a lot of illegal stuff. The FBI director even said it. But once again, since it's a liberal and the media gives her a pass, that's the way things work, I guess.
Yeah, and you honestly, that is a brilliant point, because if Comey's going to come out and say, well, Hillary did something wrong, but the intent wasn't bad, then we have to give the same benefit of the doubt to Trump, that maybe Trump did something wrong, but his intent wasn't bad. But you're also right that Trump didn't break any laws doing what he said, because merely saying, I hope you let this go, isn't obstruction of justice. It's just a comment of his wishes.
Well, see, when a Republican does something that's questionable or wrong, it's evil. They have terrible intent. They're mean people. But when a Democrat does something wrong, it's, they really didn't mean it. They're really good people. It was just a mistake. And I think that's such a complete double standard, and it's almost absurd.
Yes, Mike. Yeah, and Mike, I appreciate your call. Good point. It's all really good calls tonight. And this is where a lot of the divide is in this country, is we see the double standards. And the double standards, and this is kind of what Jonah Goldberg was getting at. The double standards is what killing us, because nobody seems honest anymore about what's really going on, about searching for the truth. Everyone has an agenda, and everyone just finds outlets that agree with their preconceived notions. So when you look at Trump and his comments, according to, the New York Times, you know that the New York Times has an agenda. So first, you're going to be skeptical if it's even true. But second, the Democrats are immediately going to think he had bad intentions, and the Republicans are going to immediately think he doesn't have bad intentions at all. And we don't even know what the truth is. We don't even know what the facts really are. We don't even know if Comey or Trump really even said it. So it creates more of this division. So that's my take on that. I actually want to move on to a completely different topic here. Well, before I get to that, though, there is one thing that has just come out today that's not getting a lot of attention. I found this from Mediaite.com by Colin Kalmbacher. He said that according to a story recently promoted by Middle Eastern expert Josiah Landis, the CIA's Train and Equip program for so-called moderate Syrian rebels was restarted in early April after being frozen in February of this year. In no uncertain terms, this means that the U.S. is again directly supporting radical Islamic terrorism. Now, of course, for President Trump, his hypocrisy is daily bread. This guy obviously doesn't like Trump. But on this particular subject, it's especially newsworthy. Then-candidate Trump provoked a hellfire storm in miniature by accusing Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton of founding ISIS. Trump's accusation was basically the reason why, I don't want to read all of this, but basically the reason why Trump said that is because, one, we pulled out of the Middle East, and that created the vacuum for ISIS, which is true. That part is true. But the other part is we're funding all of these rebels over there, these Syrian rebels, and we think we can tell the good guys from the bad guys, but a lot of times, a lot of these weapons, when we fund the rebels, get into the hands of terrorists. And this is something Trump's actually been against. He wants to stop getting involved in all that. Some Rand Paul's been against too. But it seems like right now that the Trump administration is bringing that back. So there's a topic right there that really needs to be debated, that really needs to be discussed and talked about. But it's not because of all the distraction. But to me, that really is a concerning topic. Is this something we should be doing, or are all these weapons just going to end up in the hands of ISIS? We'll have to see, but it's something very concerning. And as I talked about in the last hour, Trump's take on Israel has kind of changed. He's not willing to say Jerusalem is the capital, which he once said he would. He's not willing to move the embassy to Jerusalem. He's not willing to say the Western Wall is a part of Israel. He seems to have backtracked a lot on that. He seems to want to make a deal with the Palestinians, even though the Palestinians are still not giving up their take that Israel should be wiped out the face of the earth. That's basically what the Palestinians want. So that's another policy by the Trump administration that's not getting a lot of attention, but is very concerning. There's no doubt about that. So 407-916-5400, text to 23680. Let's go to Joel in DeLand. Joel, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that
sure, go ahead.
I am a Trump man, and the Washington Compost, it's the Washington Post, NBC nothing but communist, ABC always been communist, and CBS communist broadcasting system. and as Rush Limbaugh calls them, MSLSD.
Actually, that's what Mark Levin calls
George
him. Go
Soros is he's got Trump in the crosshairs. He's spending millions of dollars to defame Trump, but he's gonna survive. I trust in him. He's made a tremendous. He's reversed everything that Barack Hussein Obama did.
Okay. All right, Joel, I appreciate your call. He has a lot of trust in Trump and hates the mainstream media, obviously. In terms of reversing everything Obama has done, that's actually not true. He hasn't reversed the DACA for, the amnesty for young illegal immigrants. He hasn't reversed that at all, even though he said he would. And as I just mentioned, he hasn't reversed the Jerusalem policy either. So we'll talk about that. Let's take a break here, Tom Benson. I want to get into a completely different subject in the next segment. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, and we will be right back.
Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
So I believe it was last week. Yes, last week, Attorney General Jeff Sessions made an announcement that they were going to once again bring back the strict sentencing on the worst drug offenders. And actually, I have his comment here. This is what Jeff Sessions said about that.
I have empowered our prosecutors to charge and pursue the most serious offense, as I believe the law requires, most serious, readily provable offense. It means that we're going to meet our responsibility to enforce the law with judgment and fairness. It is simply the right and moral thing to do. And we know that drugs and crime go hand in hand. They just do. The facts prove that's so. In 2015, more than 52,000 Americans died from a drug overdose. That's a stunning number. These are not low-level drug offenders we and the federal courts are focusing on. These are drug dealers, and you drug dealers are going to prison.
Okay, so right there, I hear a lot of debate on this. Because especially, a lot of libertarians out there believe this is wrong, that we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be going after drug offenders like we do because it hasn't worked, that we should treat it as a health crisis, for instance. I have a lot of people that I usually respect say the same thing. The only thing I would say to that is even Jeff Sessions says this is not low-level offenders, and this is going after the drug dealers specifically. And it's hard for me to sympathize with drug dealers who are breaking the law. But I found this column. The reason I bring this up is I found this column today from John Stossel, who I usually agree with a lot. He's a libertarian. And he completely disagrees with Jeff Sessions. And there are some things I understand what Stossel is saying, but some things I just cannot go there with him. Now, for one, I want to separate marijuana. Sometimes we have drugs arguments. We put in marijuana with like heroin and cocaine and stuff. I think marijuana is a separate thing. I think there is a legitimate argument to maybe not be as strict on marijuana and to even legalize marijuana. It will create other problems. It will. But in terms, it's not going to create the problems that, say, heroin or cocaine would create. It's just a different drug.
A lot of people believe marijuana is a gateway to stronger drugs.
Yeah, and there is a legitimate argument there as well, but there's a lot of people. It's just getting too really hard to enforce because a lot of people do it. But this is what John Stossel says about this. He says Jeff Sessions, ordered the federal prosecutors to really be strict on them, which we talked about. He says this is both cruel and stupid. He says it's cruel because Sessions' 5,000 prosecutors must now push for long jail sentences, even for people who pose no violent threat and for some who are utterly innocent. Now, I don't think he's going for people who are innocent. I haven't heard anything of that. They would still go through the court of law and the justice system, but this is what he said. John Stossel continues on here. He says it's stupid because it will cost America a fortune, but won't make us safer. He says the U.S. already locks up more than any other country. We have 4% of the world's population, but more than 20% of the world's prisoners. Now, there's a lot of truth to that, but I always a little skeptical of those statistics because I don't think North Korea is necessarily counting all their prisoners in their gulags and their concentration camps and everything. And then you have China, who probably doesn't do the same thing, and you have a lot of these dictatorships in the Middle East who they don't lock people up; they just kill them.
Right, exactly. I was just going to say,
so
people bad guys in North Korea and China don't live long enough to become criminals.
So there's a lot of places where it's probably not counting. So I'm not sure. This whole idea that we're oppressed and we're all being locked up in this country is a little much for me, I think. But I get what he's saying. Maybe it's too high. Maybe we're incarcerating too many people, and it causes a lot of other problems. I completely understand that logic. He continues on how the media perpetuated this because they would lead with every crime story, which made people want to be tougher on crime. He says politicians reacted to the media hype by passing 3-strike laws and intensifying the war on drugs. 3-strike laws worked if worked means locking people up for longer periods. But taking away judges' ability to use their own judgment is cruel to some defendants. I can understand that. We would want them to have judgment, individual judgment. This is a good point. He says it's also not clear that longer sentences made us safer. Crime dropped just as much in states that liberalized sentencing rules as states that did not. Okay, so that's a good point. He says intensifying the drug war definitely did not work. America locked drug sellers up, but drug use remained the same. Fat black market profits enticed new groups of sellers to enter the business. He says this, now almost no one claims that getting stoned is a good thing. That's not true. I actually know a lot of people that do claim it's a good thing. Drugs like alcohol should be kept away from children. I admire President Trump's self-restraint. He said never use drugs or alcohol, blah, blah, blah. But they don't do it to everyone. Lots of American adults manage drug or alcohol use while still raising families, yada, yada, yada. It says Clinton, Bush, and Obama locked up, they used drugs when they were young, but they still locked up a lot of Americans for using drugs. He said that didn't stop drug sales. The drug war just drove the trade into the hands of nastier criminal gangs. Violence between those gangs is a much bigger problem than the drug use itself. And see, this is the real debate, I think. I think there is a legitimate debate out there is if the drug war is good because it creates a lot of gangs, it can create a lot of violence in the streets, and so far and so forth. He says drug prohibition gangs like Al Capone shot each other over alcohol. It wasn't because alcohol suddenly made people more violent during those years. It was simply because a popular product was made illegal. Here's the thing on that, though. The mobs did not go away once alcohol was legalized. The mobs just moved to another illegal thing. So if we act like the gangs and the mobs are just going to go away if we make all drugs legal, I'm not sure that's the case. Because they'll just move on to something else that's illegal. So that's the argument. But this is the argument that I really have a hard time buying. He talks about that there are no beer or tobacco gangs. That's true. There are no beer or tobacco gangs, but you have to admit that tobacco and beer have caused a lot of other problems in our society that we now have to address in society. It's broken up, alcohol especially. It's broken up marriages. You have major alcoholics. You have drinking while driving. You have domestic abuse. All that stuff has been created by society. And this is my point, because he wants to legalize all drugs. Is John Stossel's lawyer. He says that in the article. And here's the point I made. Legalizing all drugs might solve one problem in terms of some of the gang violence, but it will create other problems. And we have to decide as a society the pros and cons of each. But then he goes down the road of this. And this is what I have such a hard time buying with those who want to legalize all drugs. He's basically saying that if we legalize all drugs, that drug use will not go up. That, in fact, drug use might actually go down if we legalize all drugs. I don't buy that argument. I just don't. The idea that if we make something legal, that less people will do it, It has never happened in our history. Never. A great example of that is abortion. When we made abortion legal in this country, abortion rates skyrocketed. Okay? The other thing, now he gives the example of Portugal. He says Portugal decriminalized every drug. There was no surge in drug abuse. That's one country. That's a very small country. That could be a totally different circumstance, and it's still kind of new. So maybe you can believe that. But I look at the stats of like abortion, for instance. Are you saying we should legalize all abortions and that abortion rates will go down? I mean, it already is legal, but that by legalizing it, we've had less abortions? I see no stats that back that up. I just don't. The whole point of making something illegal, that's why we have laws. If getting rid of the laws made society better, we wouldn't need the laws. You know, if you make murder legal, that means less people are going to murder. Or you make stealing legal, that means less people. That's not true. It's just not true. And people will say, well, you're a hypocrite, Mike, because you say we should legalize guns. And that'll reduce gun violence. I have never, ever said that legalizing guns will reduce the amount of guns in this country. It won't. By making guns legal, you will have more guns in this country. You will. What I'm saying is we have the right to have more guns because we have the right to protect ourselves. And by having more guns, it will be a deterrent to people, the criminals who have guns. Because the criminals will always get the guns. But the innocent people need a deterrent to that. So I've never made the argument that legalizing all guns will mean there's less guns in the country. I don't think anyone believes that. So you have abortion and you have guns. But the argument I always hear is, well, drinking went up under prohibition. They made alcohol legal, and then more people were drinking, and it didn't stop the amount of drinking under prohibition. Well, it turns out that's not true either. That's a common misconception. I'm quoting this from the book Last Call, The Rise and Fall of Prohibition by Daniel O'Crenn. A really interesting book. It's not pro-prohibition. He's not saying prohibition was a good thing. It created a lot of problems. But this is what he says in the book, and I found it very interesting. He says, in almost every respect imaginable, prohibition was a failure. It encouraged criminality and institutionalized hypocrisy. It deprived the government of revenue, stripped the gears of the political system, and imposed profound limitations on individual rights. It fostered a culture of bribery, blackmail, and official corruption, and names a bunch of things. He says, but he continues on here. He says, but in one critical respect, prohibition was an unquestioned success. As a direct result of its 14-year reign, Americans drank less. He says, in fact, they continued to drink less for decades afterward. Back in the first years of the 20th century, before most state laws limiting access to alcohol were enacted, average consumption of pure alcohol ran to 2.6 gallons per adult per year. Judging by the most carefully assembled evidence, the quantity was slashed by more than 70% during the first few years of national prohibition. It started to climb as Americans' thirst adjusted to their new regime, but even repeal did not open the spigots. The pre-prohibition per capita peak of 2.6 gallons was not attained again until 1973. His point is this. The fact is, people did drink less under prohibition as a whole in society. So the argument that making something legal means less people will do it, it was not even true in prohibition. So I can't get with you on that part of the debate. I've seen no evidence of that. In abortion, guns, even alcohol. That being said, the real debate then is if more people using drugs is worse than all the gang violence. And that's what we have to decide as a society. And that's a legitimate debate, I think, how we should address the drug war. But I usually lose these people when I hear, well, if we legalize something, less people will do it. No. I just don't buy that argument. Maybe you do. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We'll end the show with something that made Yaffee Yaffee. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
You want to listen to Beyond Reason Radio live on your smartphone? Download the Beyond Reason Radio app now. Available in the Google Play or Apple App Stores. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Yes, welcome back to the show. We have covered a lot in this show. We've been on till 8 p.m. And if you missed any of the show, make sure to check the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. I will be on tomorrow night right here live on News Radio 102.5 WFLA from 7 to 9 p.m. So it is that time of the show once again. Yes, it is time for something that made Yaffee laughy. I almost added this to the you can't make this stuff up. It's kind of a both of that. But we talked about this before, how The Rock, if you smell what The Rock is cooking. Well, apparently, America is smelling what The Rock is cooking. We talked a couple weeks ago how The Rock, the Dwayne The Rock Johnson, had, talked about how he could see himself running for president one day. And he actually seriously considering it. Well, because that was big news everywhere, public policy polling decided to do a poll. And wondering what would happen if The Rock threw his hat into the ring in the 2020 presidential race. According to the poll, The Rock would beat Trump 42 to 37%. Now, 42% still isn't that high. So it's not, exactly like The Rock would run away from it. But the fact that right now, according to a poll, The Rock, the former wrestler, now actor, who's in the new movie Baywatch, could beat Trump for president, that enough people could vote for him that he would be president. Now, I think some of these polls are ridiculous. I think Trump would get a lot more than 37%.
And the polls have not been too accurate lately.
Yeah, that's true. Although, the national polls, even in the presidential election, the state polls were off, but the national polls were pretty close. According to the popular vote, they were pretty close. So I can't bash those polls too much. But according to the report, Johnson, The Rock, is viewed favorably by 36% of voters, while only 13% view him negatively. How do you view him negatively? I don't know. It's kind of true. What is so negative about him? So there is a big question mark mixed in with the numbers, however, as 50% of voters have no opinion of the Baywatch star. They have no opinion? 50% of the country? Come on now. You have to at least have an opinion on his movies or wrestling or something.
They may not know who he is. May not know the name.
50% of the country?
Well,
I don't know. It says among Democrats, Johnson is viewed favorably by 38%, while 31% of Republicans view him favorably. The unfavorable ratings are 15 and 17%.
If you look to certain groups, I'm sure you can find 50% of the people who don't know who the vice president is.
Yeah, there's probably more people in this country who know The Rock is over who the vice president is. That's the sad truth. But in this age of celebrity politicians, who knows what could happen? It's been been a great show. We talked about a lot. I will be back on tomorrow, 7 p.m. live. If you catch the live show, you can catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Make sure to send me a friend request on Facebook. Search Michael Yaffee or follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. Have a good night. I'll catch you guys tomorrow.
Oh, well,